Stacy Lynn Harp is coaching with heart. Thank you for listening to this audio presentation. To learn more about Stacy and her coaching services, visit stacylharp.com. That's STACYL harp.com.
Welcome everybody to this edition of Coaching with Heart. Today, what we're going to do is start a brand new series. And the series, what we're going to be calling this is Envy. What it is and how to deal with it. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, oh no. Why this topic? Why is she bringing this topic up? Well, because I believe in being transparent, and I pretty much am. Unless you look at transparency like a piece of saran wrap, which means that you could just totally see through me. I don't mean that type of transparency. I just mean being vulnerable with, some of the issues we struggle with. And over the last couple of weeks, as I've been praying and seeking the Lord in my own life, the things that I have noticed that bug me, the Lord showed me. You are envious. You are totally envious of that person. And I have to be honest and say, oh my gosh, you know what? You're totally right. So how do I deal with this? Now that I know my problem, which is envy, how do I get over it? And so my guess is that I'm not the only one that deals with this. The Bible talks about not being envious, not being filled with envy. And nowhere in Scripture does it ever look at envy as something that is positive, right? Although we live in a world where good is called evil and evil is called good, and people today might say that envy is a good thing, but really, it's not. So for the sake of today's introductory lesson, let me share with you a verse from Scripture that I think you might want to write down. And if you got my email, then you already have this in your email. But this is Proverbs chapter 14, verse 30. Okay, Proverbs 14:30. And I'm going to read you the verse in both the King James Version and also the English Standard Version. This is the King James Version. It says, "A sound heart is the life of the flesh, but envy the rottenness of the bones." Okay, that's King James Version. "A sound heart is the life of the flesh, but envy the rottenness of the bones." Okay, here's the ESV version, the English Standard Version. "A tranquil heart gives life to the flesh, but envy makes the bones rot." Okay, "A tranquil heart gives life to the flesh, but envy makes the bones rot." Now keep in mind when this was written, it was written by Solomon, who was the wisest man on earth at that time, and probably the wisest man that has ever lived, by the way. And so here he is in Proverbs comparing a happy heart or a sound and peaceful heart and how that gives life to the body, gives life to your flesh, with envy, and saying that envy makes the bones rot. Okay? I don't know about you, but when I look at something in the Bible and it tells me an attitude of the heart and it tells me how it affects me physically, I'm going to pay attention. Because what this is saying is that when your heart is happy, your body is in good health. Your body, your flesh is life. It's healthy. But if you're envious, then that means your bones are going to rot. And what that tells me is that that's not a good thing. Because when you have, problems in your body, it's often tied back to your heart, your emotional heart. What I'm talking about here is your emotions. So envy is never a good thing, because rottenness of the bones in your body, that's not a good thing. Never going to be a good thing. And anybody who tells you that envy is a good thing is lying, because they are. So that's the first thing that we should look at is, how our emotions impact our body. And we've talked about this before with, negative thinking and negative words compared to positive thinking and positive words. And I'm not talking positive confession like in the New Age movement. I'm just talking having a grateful heart, versus one that is not grateful. It really does impact your body. And I can tell you, in the work that I've done in my own personal life and in the lives of the people that I've known, people who are bitter and envious and angry and jealous and all of that, they tend to have worse health than people who are happy and who are content, who smile and who laugh and who are grateful for the things that they have in their life. Inevitably, I will hear somebody complain about how they feel. And I go, that's interesting, because there's always a connection. There's always a connection. And so that's something to be very, very aware of. Let me state right up front here too, that envy is not the same as jealousy. I have a husband who made sure that that was hammered into my head way back when we got married, because I would always say envy and jealousy, and I would intertwine them. And because of the 21st century that we live in, actually it depends on, if you look at some dictionaries, what they'll do is they'll say they're synonymous, but really they're not. Envy and jealousy are different, and we're going to get into the differences later. But today what I want to do is I want to define envy for you. Envy, according to the dictionary, is this. It's a feeling of discontent or covetousness with regard to another's advantages, success, or possessions. Okay, I'm going to say that again. It's a feeling of discontent or covetousness with regard to another's advantages, success, or possessions. Discontent, not being satisfied. You're unhappy. It's a feeling of unhappiness, of not being satisfied with what you have. Or covetousness. This means to wrongly desire wealth or greed from somebody. So envy is a feeling. Keep that in mind. It's always a feeling, and our feelings always impact what we do. So if you're feeling envious, you're always going to do something negative. You will, whether it's just stopping at your thinking or actually acting out in some type of manner. You're always going to do something negative. I know in my own life, I have to be honest and say, where the Lord has showed me where I'm envious is I always, and I try not to be because it irritates me, but I get envious of others in radio because I do a radio show and I have the same guests that these people have on their shows, and my audience isn't as big, and I get irritated and I get mad and I just, think bad thoughts. But that's actually a sin, because I'm not happy for that person's advantage that they had, or their success, or even the fact that they might have more than me in regards to certain things. So, God has revealed to me that I really need to knock it off in regards to being envious there, and I need to be content with, where He has me, and with the audience He's given me, and with the connections He's given me, and all that. And the irony is that there are people who are envious of me, right? So there's this vicious circle. I know that there's people who are envious of me and what I do, but then they don't realize all the stuff that I've gone through, just like I don't realize all the stuff these other people have gone through. So it's interesting how these negative perceptions and feelings can totally impact us if we're not very careful. So the definition of envy is it's a feeling of discontent or covetousness with regard to another's advantages, success, or possessions. Another thing that I have been envious of is, when I was a kid, I used to be totally envious of all my friends that had parents who were together, who they never got separated. In fact, I remember, in particular, one friend of mine, I just loved her family. And I thought she came from the greatest family ever. And it wasn't until later I found out that her mother and her father had divorced when she was in high school. And I didn't know that. And I thought that her life was perfect, but I didn't know the truth. And I wasn't happy when I found that out, because I know what it's like to come from a broken family. And I used to be envious of my friends that had parents who put them through college. Hey, here's I've saved your whole life to put you through college. Here's, $70,000 to get your master's and your doctorate and all of that. And you can go ahead and not have to pay for any of your college education. How many of us have felt envious of stuff like that? Why? Because that person has a big advantage that I never had. And my I'm still paying off student loans. I still got like around $12,000 out of, $60,000 in student loans I still have to pay off. And so there's no lack in the area where we can look at being envious, right? At least for me, there isn't. And really, it comes down to the issue of not being grateful for what we have, or not being grateful for what God has provided for us, and not being grateful, period. And so as we go through this series together, I am going to study this along with you, and we're going to see what some of the solutions are that the Lord would have for us. I want to read you a couple of quotes regarding envy, because I think there are some pretty poignant, well-said quotes here regarding envy. Benjamin Franklin said, "To find out a girl's faults, praise her to her girlfriends." That's a funny quote when you think about it, because what he's saying is give praise to her girlfriends, and then what's going to happen is those girlfriends are going to say, "Oh, really? No, did you know this about so-and-so?" And what does that illustrate? It illustrates envy, right? I love that. Theodore Roosevelt said, "Nothing in the world is worth having or worth doing unless it means effort, pain, difficulty." And then there's an ellipsis. And it goes on to say, "I have never in my life envied a human being who led an easy life. I have envied a great many people who led difficult lives and led them well." I think that's very, very poignant. So I'll say that again. Nothing in the world is worth having or worth doing unless it means effort, pain, and difficulty. I have never in my life envied a human being who led an easy life. I have envied a great many people who led difficult lives and led them well. And think about it. Teddy Roosevelt, if you know anything about him, that he's saying quite a bit there. Anna Godbernson, who wrote, I guess, a book called The Lux, or Lukes, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, says this: "There was no pleasure in being envied on a mass scale." That's pretty powerful. Think about that. There was no pleasure in being envied on a mass scale. Can you imagine how some of these celebrities feel? That we all emulate, we lift up, we envy because we wish we had what they had? There's no pleasure in that. Very interesting quote. All right. Let me go ahead and read one more quote. We'll have more quotes as we continue our series, but François de la Rochefoucauld, I know I'm butchering that name, so whatever. But anyway, here's what this person said: "Our envy always lasts longer than the happiness of those we envy." That's pretty poignant, isn't it? Pretty to the point. Our envy always lasts longer than the happiness of those we envy. That's something to think about. Something to think about for sure. So today, as you go about your day and as you examine yourself, I really want to encourage you to seek the Lord and have Him show you where you may be envious. And then keep in mind, like I said, Proverbs chapter 14 here, verse 30, which says, "A sound heart is the life of the flesh, but envy the rottenness of the bones." If you want to live a healthy life, envy isn't going to help you out. It's going to be something that's going to hinder you and harm you. So just take that into consideration. And, as always, if you'd like to leave your comments or message me privately, there's plenty of places to do that. And I hope that you get something out of this. Thanks for listening, and tomorrow we'll continue this discussion on envy, what it is, and how to deal with it.
Thank you for listening to this audio presentation. To discover more resources from Stacy Lynn Harp, clinically trained marriage and family therapist and biblical coach, visit stacyLharp.com. That's STACYL Harp.com. Coaching with Heart.